Morning, everybody, and welcome to Strategy Cafe. I'm here with Minter Dial, who I'm going to introduce to you all in just a second. But as we get going, I just thought we'd wait for a couple of minutes for a few more people just to log in. And while we do that, as is our way, I thought it'd be nice just to bring everybody mindfully into the session. One of the thoughts that we've been working with is this idea that the sympathetic nervous system is stimulated by the in-breath and the parasympathetic nervous system is stimulated by the out-breath. So it's quite a nice idea to breathe in through the nose quite quickly and then breathe out softly and gently through the mouth for longer. So let's say for 4 or 5 seconds. So I'm just going to do that, and anyone out there who wants to join me, welcome. So deep breath in and then a slow breath out. Kind of feel that lovely relaxation as you breathe out, and that's just stimulating the parasympathetic. So do it again. As everyone logs in, let's just do it one more time. Welcome to Strategy Cafe. Now you've all relaxed, you better grab a coffee and get more stimulated. I love the idea that just by breathing out, you can stimulate a bit of relaxation. And it's really a nice way to bring everybody into attention. So just welcome all of you. Welcome especially to everybody during such a difficult time for the world, for the UK. Just wanted to take a moment just to acknowledge that, how tough things are at the moment out there. And to thank you all for taking the time to join us this morning to listen to me and Minter discussing leadership and branding. And we hope we find in this morning's discussion some inspiration for you all, some things to think about as you get ready psychologically as leaders to take your teams and your clients out of the other side of all of this and into the new world as it emerges in front of us, which we're all going to have to face in the next few months. And many of us are kind of thinking about that right now. So let's get going. So welcome to the cafe. We're going to be running up until 9 formally. We'll stay on a little bit afterwards to answer questions. Just point out to you that there's a lovely facility within GoToWebinar where you can ask questions. If you look on your control panel, there's a questions area. Minter is very generously open to answering questions, and we'd like that. We'd like it to be interactive, so I'll keep an eye on the questions as they come in, and whatever you post up, we'll try and pick up. If it's in the theme, we'll pick it up there. If we can't do it at that point, we'll pick it up at the end, but please ask questions. Now, we also have, rather excitingly, got 10 free copies of Minter's new book, which you can see behind him. You lead. I've got my copy here. And Minter has also very generously agreed to sign 10 copies. And so a little bit later on during the webinar, we're going to be selecting 10 of you at random to be the lucky recipients of a signed copy of Minter's new book. So if you're interested in that, then news on that just at the top of the hour on who the lucky winners are. So delighted to have Minter here with us this morning. I was introduced to Minter by a really good friend of Alembic and head of the Securities Institute, where I think, Minter, you gave a keynote presentation at their annual conference. And we connected after that, and I really enjoyed our conversation. So thanks very much to Rick Manfield out there for making the introduction. Delighted to have you on with us this morning. Perhaps you could just introduce yourself and tell everyone a little bit about you.
Surely. So thanks for having me on, Nick. And I loved your breathe in, breathe out. And I was wondering if you're doing the reverse, what it does to your brain if you go quickly, short in, long out.
Maybe red.
So Yeah, so I'm a Franco-American. I live in London, born in Belgium, married to a French-Spanish lady, and have spent the last 12 years of my life trying to bring about change and elegantly elevate the debate through basically a myriad of wacky stories that I like to tell.
Wonderful. What a great introduction. I was really interested to read You Lead. It's a great book, full of really fascinating insights and covers a lot of areas. But when we were talking, we were chatting about, some of the insights that come with experience of leadership, and this idea of You Lead. You're very quotable, Minter. I love it. It's really nice to meet someone who's so quotable. You Lead is a really nice kind of title, and it's obviously meaningful to you. So, I'm interested in what does that mean, and I'm interested in just, when did you first get this sense of you lead in terms of how that is meaningful to you?
Right. So working with Kogan on this cover, the idea of handwriting the title was so important because sort of it's my signature. And what is your own signature? And the little arrow upwards is a hint to this idea of go finding your journey, your north. What direction do you want to bring? And so I'd say beyond the two words, there's a sort of a bigger image that's important to me. And if I could, I would say that an alternative version of the title might have been You Lead You.
Mm.
And so much of leadership books and theses in schools, if you will, are always focusing on what you need to do, how to get the business, do better, be more performing, efficient. And I kind of wanted to just put my brakes on that and dig in and just jump into the cesspool of what is the messy relationships that you have with yourself and with your team, not to mention your family, of course, and then how to navigate through what is obviously not going to be a clear and easy path. There are always going to be things coming in. So how do you create that backbone that allows you to navigate the trade winds, the weird winds, the difficult challenges, the difficult conversations that you have? And that was really what I'm trying to do in this book, You Lead.
I love that. It kind of resonates really deeply with our practice. Self-leadership, I feel, is at the core of a leadership competency. I think what we say is that if you can't lead yourself, or you haven't looked at that and tackled some of the divisions that we all experience within us when we feel torn, we have an experience that feels shattering maybe, and we don't know how to pick up the pieces. Those are kind of quite, totemic phrases, I think, for this. If we haven't addressed that and thought about it in a way, how can we have any empathy for the people we're supposed to be leading? Does that resonate with you, that idea that, if you haven't searched the inner landscape, you can't really understand, right?
Well, so much. I mean, my experience in business. So this is sort of where the book is grounded in the fact that I spent 25 years in business in various banking, obviously cosmetics, L'Oreal, and doing some entrepreneurial activities, working in a zoo. I mean, I worked around, and I saw frequently that we had this idea that what you needed to work on as a leader was the piece that's once you're in the office, let's say 9 o'clock, and you put on your tie and you create this ambiance, you're driving the culture, you're pushing the numbers, that's what we tend to focus on in leadership. And the story I'm going to tell you, without naming who it is, we tend to think that, well, what's at home stays at home, which is just ludicrous. I mean,
Not true.
it's tricky, it's messy. Not
Yeah.
everything at home needs to come to the office. How you shower, okay, keep it to yourself. But there's so many things like how you slept. Did you have an argument with you're a single parent with your single child and you had an argument before you leave, go to work? How can that not impact you? So
Right.
you are necessarily bringing what is at home into you. Not to mention the fact that when you, let's say, are on a weekend, let's say you work Monday to Fridays to be boring and traditional, God knows that's not true these days. But you might go down the street and you might see a shop and you're going to operate as a customer. So it's an opportunity to think what it is like to be a customer, even though you're on your free time. And some of the best ideas come when you're in that famous shower or, walking in your welly boots with your two dogs. And all of a sudden this, brilliant thing. Oh, gotta remember to do that, right? So we had this one guy came in, he was the CEO, and he said, well, I'm very glad to be in this company because we operate like a family. And so that was a lovely idea, except the problem was I knew him very well through two other people. So not personally outside of work, but through two other people. One was his neighbor,
Yeah.
who said that he'd never met a more arrogant person. And that's pre going to the office. That's sort of on the weekends. That's meeting him in the corridor because they lived in a flat. And the second one was, unfortunately, because this man is married with 4 children, one of his two mistresses who had attempted to take her life because of the way he treated her.
Right.
Well, I'm sorry, that's his vision of family, and I'm sorry, but I will judge that person based on who he is as a total person. I'm not going to segregate that kind of a bad attitude, bad apple outside of work and just say, all right, that's fine. But he's family inside.
And how about you? I mean, when did this happen to you that you appreciated as a leader? So, like, for me, I think this makes total sense, and because we teach this, that, like you were saying, those little things that can happen in the morning on the way in, you're not a part person. You just are who you are, and they stay with you. They can easily stay with you unless you have a consciousness awareness of that, and an ability or a methodology to clear, so that you can be present to what is happening at work without some major negative influence. But when did this first happen for you, and what was the experience that taught you, Minter?
All right, so I actually have worse problems coming home and taking off the tie.
Right.
And that's my bigger issue. And sometimes I needed to work more on zoning and calming down and figuring it out. But I mean, this whole thing came to like a head when I was working on Wall Street, and this is where this whole story began. And so I'm 27 years old, and I'm putting on a tie. I'm going to an investment bank down on 140 Broadway, very chic. I'm the youngest vice president in the group, so I'm thinking I'm making it. And it's definitely a very significant environment, solid. You have to be intelligent and all that. And then in the evenings, I would rush home because once the stock market closed at 4 o'clock, we just had to tidy up. So I'd get in at 6. And then but at 4, I'm ready to go. And at 5, I'm home. Off comes the tie. And I slip on a tie-dye t-shirt. And I go to a concert and I dance for 5 hours like a lunatic to this band called the Grateful Dead and sweat and laugh and just let everything go. And then I grab my sorry ass home. And then in a few hours, I get in the shower, shave, prepare, put on the tie, and back to Thailand. And Thai isn't Thai, not Thailand. And anyway, this idea, this dichotomy, it got to me at a certain level, and I felt like I needed to bring the tie-dye attitude into work. Obviously, I didn't do that at the investment bank because I left shortly thereafter. But that's sort of part of my journey. How do you bring the tie-dye of you into work? I'm not going to take the LSD that I was taking into work. That doesn't seem to be appropriate. But elements of me as an individual, that sort of free-flowing, free-loving kind of dancing,
Yeah.
happy to look like a lunatic person
Yeah.
into work and yet be successful.
I love it. I'm just going to put this back up. So, I think this is a nice segue into this check model, which I picked out from the book, which I really like actually. So, curiosity, humility, empathy, courage, and karmic, which is, I think, your kind of qualities to bear in mind as a leader. I'm so on that point about bringing the tie-dye Minter dial into the Tide Minter dial at work. post-bank, I'm guessing required a certain courage. So I'd like to come to that in a second. Before then, I just want to just explore karmic, because I think it's an unusual word. Maybe most people probably do know that, but just let's explore that meaning. So my understanding of that, like dharma and karma, I always saw them as, what goes around comes around, right? And then also as fate. So I think dharma is like fate. The tide is coming in, the tide is going out. Sometimes, you're left on high and dry on the beach, and that's just the way the market moves in and out. Whereas I think karma is what goes around comes around, right? So one of my clients once put it, you never meet the same person just once, which is a neat way of putting it. But I think this is more than that. Karma is more than that. It's almost like a spiritual dimension to this. Is that right? What is
Yes,
karmic?
I'm far more interested in the spiritual dimension. I mean, let's say in a general level. With regard to karma, there actually, I feel, a few misconceptions as to what karma is. And the idea of what goes around comes around is broadly accurate. But what I tend to zero in on is with karma is what is your intention?
Yeah.
And what is your action that you do to follow your intention? Because by
Yeah.
the way, you can have a great intention and screw it up royally when it comes to the action.
Yeah.
But as long as your intention, as you looking in the mirror, evaluating you yourself with some great integrity and honesty, then, all right, you fucked up in the action, but at least you had a good intention. And so that if you continuously seek to evaluate your intention and that you have a decency in that intention, because by the way, you can't just be going around and protecting the world and be great about everything. It's okay. We all have shadows, and not every intention is perfect. But on balance, if you have decency in your intention, you do actions that portray and retrieve that intention, then the chances are that will do you good stead over time
Yeah.
because
So
you're being true to you.
I hear a couple of things. So number one is to have intention before you step in. So to me, that requires you to be aware of that. You need to know to stop, know to check in. I didn't mean that's not a pun, but actually that's quite nice. Just check in. Maybe that's your intention here. Think karmic, so what's my intention? But then the other thing I'm hearing also is that doesn't necessarily get you off the hook, because things can still go wrong. So there's also a requirement to openness to feedback and trial and error and learning. So you've got to have that second step, right?
So there's one thing that's upstream to all this, which is prior to intention. And this is where it gets, let's say, more complicated, but also more powerful.
Yeah.
Is if you can relate your intention to what you've decided who you are going to be, then it's even more, it has more congruence. So the example is, well, I have this great intention. I want to solve world hunger. Okay, great. Oh, that's good of you, Minter. That's a very valuable, valid idea in general. It's heroic and all that, but it absolutely isn't part of me. I mean, yes, I've been to India. Yes, I've been to the shanty town in Johannesburg and so on, but I haven't made this part of my life. So I'm just basically co-opting a nice intention. And there are lots of intentions, lots of things that need to be fixed. So where it gets interesting is when you can start to link your intention to who you really are. And mine is elegantly elevating the debate, connecting dots, people, and ideas. That's my North Star. So when I'm looking at this intentional element, when I can be in that space and really connect those dots, that's when you feel that sort of, well, and by the way, the chances are your actions are going to be stronger because you're in your zone. You've checked into who you are and who you want to be, not just to a nice intention.
And I think identity is, one of the most powerful forces in our sense of, as tautology, a sense of self, right? But identity, and to work on that so that you know who you are, who you feel, your root, how you feel solid in your identity and your expression, in order to then think about intention coming from somewhere, right? I think that's what you're saying here. Am I right? So you know who you are, you know what your persona is, you know what you stand for, and then your intention roots out of that. Got a great question in here from one of the listeners about where does courage come in here, which is my one as well. So there's two on here which I really like. Is empathy. I really like humility. And I'm curious to pick up another word about courage and the bravery needed to step into being self, as a leader. And maybe you can pick those ideas up a little.
All right. Well, so there are some of these which can feel counterintuitive, if you will.
Yeah.
Humility and courage, empathy and courage. They don't necessarily feel like they're bed partners, right? A courageous, humble person, of course, it does exist, but it's sort of not what you would expect of a humble person. You'd imagine the bravado of courage. And so the first part is to have the courage to be genuine with yourself and have the courage to open up kimono subjects that maybe from your past that are fears. By the way, we all have existential issues, and no one has a perfect record, and no one is perfect. And so the courage is at, zeroing in on yourself, that despite your fears, you want to go in there and try to be the best version of you that you can be. But you can only be that if you're aware of what your imperfections are. So that's the first level of courage. The second one is standing up for what you believe in. Of course, the first point there is, what the hell do you believe in? And here's the sort of rub or insight. It's easy, especially when you have some two gray dots in between your shoulders, to kind of rationalize anything you believe in. There are roughly 75 values, and I'm sure if I had any number of you guys saying, "Hey, listen, do you think it would be a good idea? You believe in it would be good if there were world peace?" Well, duh, right? And wouldn't it be great if we solved world hunger? Duh, get rid of global warming and all that. So there are a million of these things. What you need to do is pick your battle. If your company has the word strategy in it, you can't be everything to everybody. So you have to have the courage to stand up for what you believe in, which means that if I'm the CEO, hey, Mr. Dial, that's the traditional old fashioned. Hey, Mr. Dial, do you think it's really important to fix the world's global warming or climate change? Yes, I do, but it's not my top priority. What do you mean it's not your top priority? Damn it, don't you know all the young people want this? And I understand, but it's not my top priority. You have to, I'm going to tell you what is my priority, and it's this. And so the courage to not just say, roll over and say, yeah. Hashtag, of course I'm in. You can't hashtag every bloody problem in the world.
So I love it. I think that's right. So I think, here we're talking about Minter's experience of doing the inner search, understanding the self, feeling the tensions that pull us on the inside, accepting those, understanding how they interact within us, and creating from that a strong sense of self, of identity, of position, and then having the courage to take that out. And so this next step is about taking it out into your leadership community. And I really like this next slide. So just moving on a little and talking a little bit about your kind of idea of brand here. I guess this kind of position, as you bring your identity as a leader into relation, it's into relation with all of these people in this slide, right? So to your tribe, your core, your customers, your suppliers, etc., around the loop. Maybe just talk to this a little bit, and just your quotable self. Those at the center carry the core concentrate of your brand in terms of culture, beliefs, and values. And I think you've been kind of like touching on that in this self leadership. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does. So let me just go back to a little bit what I was talking about before, because it's relevant to this slide. This is basically called the inside out model. And the thing that we all have, and I first, right up there, top of the line, needed to do this, which is distill down from all these great concepts, these wonderful values. I mean, I said there are roughly 75 values. I mean, who wouldn't want to be called, let's say, have integrity, be honest, love family, be innovative, all these different values, they all sound great. So you put them into your beaker, and you have all these things and you justify them all, and they're all living, but really what happens is you have this sort of very weak solution.
Right.
It's this liquid with just a ton of stuff in it, It's trying to be everything to everybody. And so what you do need to do is put the old Bunsen burner underneath it
Right.
and get to the fundamental core. So that's the light stuff evaporates. You're nice to have. Hey, let's go back down. Let's figure out who we are at the core. And so my insight here is that we have to get over the fact that we're intelligent and we can justify everything and post-rationalize everything to do that hard work and make the selection down to those core values. So when I brought this model out, it was sort of in counterpoint to customer centricity, because if you notice, the customers are not at the center of the model. And so many people will say, well, this is the wrong model. It should be customer. Go ahead.
Could they be? Could customers be Redcanites?
Well, so all right. So there's some terminology in this. So first of all, I'm talking about the company I ran for nearly 4 years called Redken. So anyone know their Redken shampoo that they use? Go ahead and put it in the chat. So this is a hairdresser brand, and it comes from New York, and it's distributed in 40 countries. And was at the time when I was running it was roughly $300 million. It's now around about $600 million and doing very well. And I would say largely because of this model here. So the customers are typically, there are many versions of customers, and it's very easy to lose the plot. Who are we talking about when we talk about customers and stakeholders? So the first people who need to buy your products or wish to buy your products need to be you,
Right.
and your employees. They need to believe it, not because it's free, but because they believe in it. Believe not just in the product, but the system around it, the ecosystem.
Yeah.
I like to talk about the brand tattoo test, which suggests that you as the CEO, even though you know full well that at some point you're going to bugger off, right? You're not going to stay around and work, and well, hopefully not until you croak. So even though you might leave the company, as I did, would I be prepared to tattoo my body with some element of the brand that suggests that I really am the concentrate of the brand? So this is the philosophy of the Inside Out. The Redkenites, the artists in this model are the Redken performing artists. And these are hairdressers who are independent hairdressers who've bought in on the system and therefore become our relay. They are ambassadors, if you will, but they're living the brand and they are the living expression of them. Around the world, we had roughly 1,500 of them. And then we have the people who sell, and they have to buy the product from us too. So they're customers. They buy the product from us, and then outside of the other door, if you will, they have to sell it into the hairdressing salons. So we have to treat them, and that was one of the tricks that we had, despite L'Oreal's approach with distributors, is we consider them as a client. Yeah. That's how you get them to become partners. If you think of them as partners, chances are that won't go as far as you need to go. Anyway, we got distributors in bed. We have to have a philosophy shared. Then we have the salon owners who are buying the product from the distributors. Then the salon owners are supplying the hairdressers who are in the salon. And those are the ones who are then slopping on color onto the hair of their consumers. So the key point was, well, this is the whole journey. What distillate of the brand are you going to draw out? And you have to make sure that it's lived inside first in a congruent manner with what you're trying to express outwards. And here's the thing we did strategically. We stopped in terms of going crazy on our mission up to the salons. We decided that our customers had to be in the focus we had on the salon owners, the salon hairdressers, because you just can't be everything to everybody. And if we got that distillate right, then they would find the customers and let them do the rest.
I love it. So I think this is really related to the earlier comment about self, about identity, about expressing that powerfully. It kind of, for me, it speaks a little bit to the idea of charisma in leadership, which is sometimes seen as a bad thing because we have these great charismatic speakers, you know, but here is a different interpretation of charisma because it's about how your energy bounces out, right, and creates that energetic link. And it's got to be, like you said, a distillate. So something powerful, a few core ideas that resonate, and then that idea kind of takes the message of the brand, carries the message, the concentrate of the brand. I wondered about this idea here, discretionary energy. Now, I'm just going to pause for a second as Minter, you and I are just discussing, leadership and branding and, what the connection is there, given it's just 9 o'clock and just acknowledge the timing. So we're going to carry on this conversation for just 10 minutes. I'm going to come back to this idea of discretionary energy, which I think is related, and I think Minter will be able to elucidate that in a tick. But just for everyone out there, put your questions in. We'll pick up a few. I can see William Pedder is out there and has put his hand up. So William, if you're still listening, put your question into the questions area. If you can find that on your GoToWebinar app, and we can pick your question up. I got a nice
and don't
comment.
forget the 10 books. Don't forget the 10 books.
Don't forget the 10 books. Oh, thank you. This is for me. Yeah, and we'll pick up your question in just a second. So, so just very quickly, the 10 books are going to go to William Pedder, Chris Raven, Julia McClelland, George Dyer Wilson, John Purvis, David Hill, Wayne Till, Felicity Mould, Gunther Umpak, Nikki Moorhead, and Michael Shapiro. So I think that's our 10. So congratulations, guys. We'll have a signed book out to you in the post shortly thereafter. So we'll reach out to everybody and just work out how to get those to you. And then just a quick note for next time. So after today's webinar, it'll be recorded. You can pick it up and listen and come back in. Register for the next one. We're going to start to talk about how we adapt in this new landscape of leadership. The pandemic has really created a revolution, shifted the environment significantly. We're all in the middle of that. So what's the new vision? What are the problems? How do we solve them? What are the great tips that we're already seeing? We don't have the answers to all of that. We're going to just start the conversation next time round and engage with the idea of how do we as a group start to tackle these problems and create the new vision. So come back to us next time for that. Minter, thank you very much for staying on with us for a bit.
Of course. Hopefully it's good for everybody who's listening in, and chime in with your thoughts. We like to interact, not just all
how do we bring this back? Discretionary energy. So we were just talking about the distillate of brand and how that relates to you lead, and then discretionary energy.
So I think energy is such an important thing, and my son and I have been chatting about quantum mechanics and Einstein, and we are all energy, and God knows it. I feel it more than ever is true. So here, let's say the playing field is we're all doing stuff, we're being intentional, we have desires to succeed, and we're pushing hard. So there's no lack of effort in general. But what makes the difference is when you are tapping into your discretionary energy, the one that is above and beyond, the one that is a choice where you have the agency to bring it in. Otherwise, You're just doing business. So discretionary energy is about that. Like in the beginning when you were doing our little breathing exercise, it's about finding something that resonates with you at a deeper level. So generally, what I'm talking about here is purpose. But what I want to lean in on this particular point is that when we talk about purpose, so much of these ideas is sort of like purpose washing. We've got one, yeah, it's really cool. We want to save the world, and you can hear the eyes rolling. So these purposes where the boss doesn't really believe it, he goes yada yada yada. He's told by his comms person to talk about it, and then the other one is, well, it's doing something to be better for everybody else. Well, actually, nothing for me. And I'm going to have an example that should be poignant, and maybe there are some people who work there in the group. Amazon. They have this magnificent, huge purpose to be the most customer-centric organization on this earth. Okay, great. Oh, that sounds really great. Let's be customer-centric. So if I'm an Amazon employee, I'm wondering, how does that help me? Oh, the time when I go off at home and I put in an Amazon order, that's my moment. But that's not the only moment. I actually have to spend, a lot of time in significantly difficult conditions, not getting paid the most, as we know from what's written in the press. So I think that I call out that mission for being not strong. It needs to talk to everybody.
Not lived enough.
It's certainly not lived. It's lived Two, like, you're a pass through, you're a conduit to make it happen, but it doesn't
Yeah,
stop at your station.
yeah, that's
So when
powerful.
when I was when I was at Redken, we had a mission, and when I came in, Redken had been an independent company. It was purchased by L'Oreal, and L'Oreal has all sorts of processes and policies, and and when the mission when I looked at the mission, and I leaned in on this particular idea of how to make it come alive with the employees. You're going to see immediately how it was complicated. The
Yeah,
mission of Redken was earn a better living, live a better life.
right.
Okay. So in the L'Oreal world, what does that mean? Well, you have a grade. That's what you get paid. You get to keep your job because you work 60 to 70 hours a week in presence at the office. And if it's not 80 or 90 hours. Okay, so let me just see how that works. Earn a better living, live a better life. I'm working many more hours than normal. I have a standardization in the pay grade. And by the way, because you are so worth it to work at L'Oreal, you didn't always get the highest pay, and live a better life. I get to work 90 hours a day in the office. Oh, that's great. So I'm in this model, and it's really important to understand the model around which you're working, because you can't just sort of throw them out and pretend like they don't exist, because that's illegal, actually. You have to be careful about all that stuff. So what my intention, one of the things I feel I brought to the Redken organization worldwide, was how to do that within the L'Oreal construct, such that the employees who are loyal employees working for Redken feel that they earned a better living and lived a better life.
I've got a couple of questions coming in, which I think relate. So William has found his way into the question area, which is fabulous, and says, "How do you show up? How do you show up to your staff when you have doubts like that about the brand, right?" And then nice comment from Rick, just talking about his take on some of your insights is around the journey. The being a member of the institute is a journey, and joining in that journey purposefully, I think, is kind of where he's got to with this. And then the question just saying, can we bring in the idea of empathy, and how does empathy come into this?
Right. Well, that's a bunch. So my head is trying. My neurons are just firing off.
How do you
So
show up when you
let's,
build a brand,
yeah.
and how do you make the journey real, which I think you're just talking to us about there? What's that step into the reality of it? And then where does empathy fit?
All right. So on the first one, it's unlikely that anybody has the perfect situation. In the United States, Amazon and Walmart are regularly identified as the top company with purpose. That's what they're judged by the customers as. They also happen to be judged as the top bottom two in the same category. So it's a messy idea, and nobody has a perfect scenario. So when you come into it and you know that your company isn't doing it, well, the first point is to be honest and to declare at some level, certainly in the inner circle to begin with, get them on board, show them you are able to say, I don't feel so good about this. I have a personal doubt. It's okay to say you have doubt. It's okay not to be okay. And if you just that's when you gloss over it, it's not going to happen. It's not going to lean in and have them expressing to you that it's going to be yes, sir, kind of people, as opposed to, well, me too. This is my situation. So you need to galvanize the group at a more honest level about it, and then work to fix it. What I had to do was monumental. Earning a better living, living a better life within a L'Oreal construct. And so I had to find my partners who were going to help. I wasn't going to do it by myself, who
Yeah,
believed in the same idea, but we
yeah.
didn't have the same execution. We didn't know that yet. So we had to construct that together, collaborate in making that happen.
This
As to,
transformation is hard, right? So
oh yeah,
the idea is powerful, but then the transformation, it needs the power of that idea to engage again, like a tribe of people who have the essence of that idea, prepared to take it into change, which is the tough
well,
part.
and yeah, and imagine doing that with 40 countries. We were in
Yeah,
Japan, Australia, Norway, Germany, Italy, all these different countries with different attitudes towards earning a better living, money, speaking about money, that's so gauche in some countries.
yeah,
And living a better life, what do you mean, get off? I just need to do the business, dude.
right.
And I'm trying to do that within L'Oreal organizations that are really run around finances. So it was a tall order within getting the L'Oreal people on board in each of the subsidiaries. So it's a messy process. So I know the third question is about empathy, and
Yeah.
I think that is well. So empathy is so useful across the board, but here is something glorious about empathy. We have, I'm going to actually tell you a story. I have done a survey on empathy, and surveyed roughly 10,000 people.
Okay.
And the question is, do you consider yourself to have well above average, average, below average, or well below average empathy? And I'm thinking that I have a very biased network of people, because clearly my friends, the network who filled in this questionnaire, are a different kind of category, because 73% have either above average or well above average level of empathy. We had under 20% who have average, and
Okay.
then something like 3% below average, maybe
You're
1%
sensing
well below.
some bias in your response here, I guess.
Yeah, so I'm not a
From your
mathematician.
distribution.
I'm a literary guy, but I think there's something gone wrong in that number. So here's the thought with empathy. We think we're being empathic, but there's a perception and reception of it. So the wake-up call to me, Minter, which is why I wrote a book on the topic, which is, all right, Minter, you think you're being good, you got the rational thing going on, but you're not actually being really empathic.
Right.
And a number of times my wife has called me out since writing a book on empathy, Minter, not very empathic of you. And so the challenge is, A, trying to be more empathic than you are, which requires being more self-aware about your empathic superpower that you think you have. Two is to understand that you don't need to be empathic with everybody all the time. The tyranny of empathy is about as destructive as the tyranny of purpose.
Right.
You need to just dial in to people and situations at different times. And here's the
Yeah.
real crunch. The problem is it all takes time.
Right.
It takes energy and time to be empathic. So that's why you can't be in total empathy mode all the time, everywhere.
Exhausting.
It is. So what was the second question, Nick? I think I've
No,
lost
I
that
think
one.
I think you covered them. I think it was great. So there was the question about how do you address it when you don't fully believe in the brand. I think a great answer about honesty, about taking it as it is, and then reaching people at a place of honesty to start with is a great point and powerful point. And then it's a lovely point about multicultural change and how you address kind of ideas which don't necessarily resonate in different cultures in the same way. Which is kind of a side point, which is quite exciting just to listen to. But we didn't really get into that, but it's just an interesting point, right? And then a lovely point that Rick is making about the journey, and about the pay it forward culture. So, fundamentally here we're talking about engaging people, Redconites, if you like, I think, in the culture. And then what is the essence of that culture is resonating around the product and the product experience and the love of the brand. And, anything that's not lovely, I think, making me think of Tom Peters saying excellence is the practice of the pursuit of everything that's the avoidance of everything that's not excellent. So the same here, right? You've got to love your brand. So, in what ways do we not love it? It's quite an interesting question.
So to tag on to what Rick was bringing up, the interesting thing is sometimes we lose track of the purpose. Because if I just stick with, I'm talking about another story. So I was working with a food company, and what was their purpose? Well, our purpose is to be profitable. All right, well, that's not like I got to go very far. We make very low end food. That's the canned beans and canned, those sort of things. I said, well, all right, no, your purpose is to nourish a lot of people who can't afford to have this, luxury meals. You have an extraordinary purpose to
Yeah.
educate them about food and to bring good food to the table so you can talk about how they should be cooking to optimize, even if the ingredients are what they might dream about. So tap into that and remember that it's not just about bringing in the number of, bean counting pounds and the P&L. And if you can then relate that, so in the journey, you need to be finding something that relates into you. And if you choose to work at that canned food company, you need to then dial in on why that's important to you. Because you might have just fallen into that job. You came out of school, they hired you. Oh, it was a great challenge. Look, I'm a marketing manager at this company. We sell baked beans. It's really exciting. And you do that. That's the justification story going on. You have made no link in at a personal level to those baked beans. So if I start telling you about the baked beans I used to have at campfires, probably not something we should talk about on the air, but
yeah,
let's say that's the kind of thing you need to dial into, obviously, at a deeper level.
I'm really conscious of everyone needing to get off and to start their day. Very, very grateful, Minter. You've been incredibly generous in joining us this morning, staying on for 15 super bonus minutes to discuss some of the questions.
Easy for me, Nick.
So for everyone that's listening, this is recorded and it'll be on all our channels as a podcast, including the bonus 15. Go on.
And I just want to do a little sales pitch, if I might, for a session I do, which is free, 25th of February. It's called the Connected Leaders Experience. It's a 1.25 hour opportunity to hopefully get some energy. That's the prime idea, some inspiration, some thoughts, and also connect with people in a way that is disarmingly different. And for you who have done an empathy circle, the little hint is I really try to drive empathy and do a little mini empathy circle within. So it's a really unique experience. We had a fantastic show up when we did our first one this week. And so 25th of February, it's going to be, you go to my site, you can see Minterdial /.
Maybe we can share the link on the, if you guys have the link, we'll share it around with everyone when they get the video link, if that's okay.
Yes, indeed. Go for it.
Thoroughly recommend those things. I really enjoyed the empathy circle with Minter. It was super. Just wrapping up very quickly for anyone who's still around on there, just thank you very much for joining us this morning. Peace and good health go with all of you out there. Sending you our best wishes. Just a quick reminder to come and have a look on the website now. You'll be able to book up for the next one. We're just going to start this conversation and really welcome interaction and conversation from those of you out there who are clients, not clients. Just let's start talking about how we reimagine the world and what are the practical issues and practical solutions right now that we can start getting ready for the post-pandemic kind of state.
So it's you have the cafe in the morning and then the Connected Leader Experience in the evening.
Sounds great. I can't wait. So thank you all very much for coming along this morning. As you all say thank you and goodbye, and thank you for all your questions and comments on the chat this morning, we'll get the books out to you. And just a last little note from me that as part of our kind of idea of how to help, we've made our resilience online course free all the way through to the end of February for anyone, literally anyone who wants to pick it up and run it. It's pretty good, I think, really helpful. Loads of people have already signed up, and it's nice just to see the feedback and see that people are finding it very useful. So if you want a link to that, just share it with somebody who you feel might need a bit of extra energy just right now, and please do. It's free until the end of February, and it's easy to access. So just let us know if you want to get that link. Thank you all very much for coming on today, and that's the end of the webinar, and so I'm going to say goodbye. Thank you very much.
Sayonara.